Okay, we are ready to go and we're streaming, so have a great meeting. Jane, you can take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon. I am Jane Matthews. I am chair of the Asheville Area Riverfront Design Reviews Planning and Design Review Committee. And I welcome you to the January 14th meeting. Just want to let you know that there are 5 members, and I believe, oh, actually, I didn't see, we have 4 members present. Is that correct? I will take roll call. And our role is to review submittals to the committee for compliance with the design review guidelines for the Riverfront area, and to make recommendations to the full commission for its review and approval at a later date. All members and staff are participating virtually, and we appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a little bit differently than we have in the past, but by now, almost a year worth of meetings. We are also streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website, and also linked on the committee page or the city's YouTube channel. We also have an option for the public to listen in by phone or call in. Again, for those of you who are here with us today, we welcome you. And now I'm going to introduce the committee members who are participating virtually, and also maybe take the roll call. So as I call your name, just please maybe state your background and maybe say that you're here, okay? Let's see, Kate and Kaya.
Hello, I'm a landscape architect.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Lindsay Roden.
Hi, I'm an architect with McMillan Paz & Smith.
Right. Jeremy Goldstein.
Present. I am in commercial real estate, develop property, so on and so forth.
Many hats. And Joe Ramsmeyer. Joe, you're muted.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm present. I'm a woodworker in the River Arts District.
Great. And again, I'm Jane Matthews. I am principal of Matthews Architecture in Asheville. And let's see, and we have on our agenda today one item for, well, I guess we have 2 items. I'd look to staff for that. If we have time, we were going to look at a second project, but the first project we have is for the project on Trucker's Place. Am I correct, Sasha?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so this is 17 Trucker's Place. It's coming for its first review, or, it's a review to your committee. And then after that, we have a Grant Center addition, which is kind of really an expansion, and we're not doing a full, as long, probably we won't spend as much time on that, but we'd like to get your feedback on that. So.
Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding that Megan, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and I guess you're presenting the project today.
Yes, I'm Megan Viren. I'm with Cross Development. We will be the owner developer of 17 Truckers Place, and we are proposing a caliber collision. On the call with me today too is Brenda Rooney. She's FWH Architects, and she will be the project architect. We have Todd Burnett. He is with Freeland and Kaufman. He will be the civil engineer on the project. And then we also have Blake Cox. He's with Freeland and Kaufman, and Amy Swisher, who's with Cross Development. So I guess it's Jane. Should I go ahead and start kind of our little presentation?
Sure. If you were to give us an orientation and overview of what you're proposing, and then we will have questions, I'm sure, and discussion with you prior to making any decisions. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to present. Let me know if everybody can see the Google Maps screen.
Yep, it's up on the screen.
All right, and everybody can hear me okay? Okay. So we are looking at developing 17 Truckers Place in Asheville. I figured we could just look at the Google Maps so we could just get a general orientation of where it's at. It is adjacent to the new, I guess, recently redeveloped Aldi, and on Swananoa River Road and Truckers Place. It's currently vacant. I think maybe previously there was something on it that was demolished a while ago. But at the moment it is sitting vacant, and behind it is this Asheville Fleet Service. And to the east is WNC Ceramic Tile. To the west is the Aldi. And then across the street is the river. And then it looks like there's this much larger commercial development to the south of the river. So first I was going to bring up our site plan, our proposed site plan. And if you would like me to zoom into anything in particular, let me know. I'm not sure how big this shows up for everybody. But so this is our proposed layout. The front, to the down here is Swananoa River Road. Then Truckers Place, the Aldi is over here to the west, and the tile that tile shop is to the east. We have the orientation of the building pushed up towards Swananoa Road. The main entrance is over here on the west side of the building. And our access is pushed to the north side of the site off of Truckers Place. And for Caliber Collisions, if you're not familiar with them, it is a kind of a drive-in, drive-out auto body repair shop. They don't do like heavy mechanical. It's purely body shop, kind of minor cosmetic related work. It's a really clean facility. And so the way that I just thought I would touch on just kind of like their general operation, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand kind of how it works. So for Caliber, it's if you get in an accident, a minor ding, crash, your insurance company will direct you to Caliber Collision for your repairs. And so all the vehicles that will come to this shop will be drivable. It will just be a scratch or dent type collision. So that it is a drivable vehicle. So the people coming will drive to the facility. They park in one of the customer parking spaces, drop off their car, and then they will come back and pick it up. Once it gets dropped off at the shop, there's a gate fence around the storage parking area. The workers at Caliber Collision will take the car back into the service area, work on it, and then it will be back out into the customer parking when the customer comes to pick it up. So all of the parking up here in the front and outside of the gate is considered the customer parking, and then everything behind the gate is kind of the storage parking, which you can kind of see the fence along here. And just for an orientation, I was going to pull up the elevation. So this is the kind of the prototypical elevation that Caliber presents, and this elevation here would be the view off of Truckers Place. This is the east elevation, which would be facing the ceramic, the tile shop. This is the north elevation that would face that. Can't remember what it was called, but the property to the north. South elevation is what would be facing Swananoa Road. It is typically a pre-engineered metal building with colored panels as shown on the elevation. The office wrap is a mix of stone and ephes. Brenda, I don't know if you have anything that you want to talk about on the elevations, or if we want to get into any specific questions. I can go through all of the slides, Jane, if you would like, or the floor plan and other information we provided.
I think the elevations are really key. I noticed your floor plan is mirrored or not oriented to the site plan. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. So it should be.
This is the front, right? I mean, the front is to the right, but it's actually on the left.
Yeah, it needs to be rotated and flipped, because the bay, this is showing the bay doors opening up. So you're right, it is orientated.
I mean, there's a north arrow shown, but that's not north.
I apologize for that.
Okay. I mean, that, to me, that would give me, I don't know, I look to the rest of the commission if they have, or the committee, if they have any other information they really need at this point, or I know you have a signage package. You may want to just kind of review that since that was included.
And Jane, if I may, I think it would also, after you do that, Megan, I think it would be helpful to talk about maybe going back to the site plan and talking about the retaining walls and the elevation of the site, so folks understand that too.
Okay. So I just pulled up the sign package, which so typically this is a very typical sign package for Caliber. It should be based off of a code check with City of Asheville. But so right now, and right now we're showing signage. So this tower feature, this is what we consider the kind of the tower feature, the main entrance where people are entering the building. The way that we currently have it oriented and laid out on the site plan is shown on this corner. In some discussions with Caliber and just thinking about it, we might move this to this corner so it's more prominent from Truckers Place and Swananoa Road. I just wanted to bring that up. This is their typical kind
Excuse
of.
me, I'm sorry, Megan. Yes. When you say that, you're talking about just the signage, right?
So the tower the whole feature would kind of move to the corner. So this would mirror and switch over to here, so you could see it from the road more prominently.
Would it be the entrance then?
Yes.
So it sounds like the entrance might still be on Truckers Place, but would the bricks wrap around the corner?
Yeah.
Swananoa River.
Correct. Correct.
So it might be like the opposite side, I guess the north side of the building where it's got the stone, but there's no door on the.
Correct.
Does it have stone there, or just one corner? Just one corner with a window, right?
Correct. So the stone runs along the bottom down here on the wainscot line, and then up to all the way up the kind of the tower feature in the corner.
But that's facing Truckers Place, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So this elevation faces Truckers Place. What we were considering is moving, and it wraps. This facade wraps the corner. So we were considering about moving this feature to the Swananoa Truckers Place corner. So it's more of a corner feature. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the elevation along Swananoa River Road would be different than what you're showing here.
Correct. It would basically mirror.
Just
Yes.
Just at the corner, though.
Just at the corner. Yes.
Megan, could I ask a question?
Yes.
I noticed on the signage package, the plan view is different than it is on the other site plan, as far as where the dumpster is located and some of the parking spaces.
Correct. Yeah, when he put, so this was, unfortunately, he didn't have time to get it updated prior, but so this was our original layout that we had put together when we got our survey done of the site. The floodway line encroached more into the property, and so we had to adjust some things, and that's the difference between the site plan that we actually submitted for the presentation versus what the sign vendor is showing on his package. So when we got that data back, we had to push things back 24 feet and move things around to get everything to still lay out properly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with the site. It's been an elevated, I guess, compacted fill there that's elevated somewhat. It's been there for
Correct.
several years. Yes. Well,
Correct. Yes.
okay.
So
So
yes.
the site plan is the more up to date, the more what you're proposing.
Correct.
Okay. With the dumpster in the northeast corner. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And well, you can I can see the grading there and the fence that you're proposing for the customer parking versus the cars that are waiting.
Right.
Are you going to have to do much additional filling and modifying? I know I went by there this morning actually, and there's a chain link fence where the building behind and the lot behind is that the extent of the lot?
Yes. So it is. So it's this entire green space. I think the chain link fence is right about here. The property, I think, our property boundary extends a little bit farther out towards Swananoa.
Mm-hmm. But on I guess would be the north side towards the other developed property, there's a chain link fence. Is that the northern border of your lot?
Yes, if I believe so. If the chain link fence, are you referring to that kind of runs between the green space and then where he's got cars?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay. But is that area going to have to be filled in more and to elevate it, or is that just going to be?
Yes, so we are going to have to fill. So this site does say we are subject to a floodway and a flood zone, and so to the finished floor elevation that we need to bring the site up to is 2022. And Todd, I don't know if you're on the call and you can remember exactly how much more we need to bring the site up. I don't even know off the top of your head.
The current site, that was the compacted fill that you see out there today, sits at roughly elevation 2018, and we have to get to 2022. So 4 more additional feet above what is out there today.
Okay. Okay. Well, that answers my question. So I understand now.
So do you want to go back to the site plan? We can just like look at the retaining wall that goes all the way around.
Yes.
About that and how you guys arrived at that.
So unfortunately we're having to propose quite a bit of retaining wall because of the current, the existing grades around the site, and then what we're going to have to raise the site to get out of the flood zone. And so the retaining wall starts, up here on the northwest corner and wraps around almost the entire perimeter of the building, all along the frontage along Swananoa, and then up along adjacent to Trucker's Place.
And Megan, what is that wall? Because there was conflicting information on the site plan as to what the material was. It said segmental wall in one place, and it said cast in place, and we have nothing to that illustrates what that material would look like, be like.
So Todd, I don't know if you want to jump in if I get off board, but so portions of it would be the segmental wall along, I think it's primarily along Truckers Place, and then like this entire section, the north and east side of the property. And that's typically like a split face concrete block. That color, we would usually pick a color that matches the building. And then the cast in place would be the retaining wall that is adjacent to the building along Swananoa Road. And we would pick a finish, like a textured finish and color that would also match the building for any sections of the wall that would be exposed.
So what are you matching on the building? Because the building doesn't have those materials.
So we would match the colors, and it would be this, the tan color that it is the body of the shop.
But Megan, what you're saying is that on the Swananoa River Road side, it's going to be more just a vertical retaining wall.
Concrete,
poured
concrete.
Yeah, cast in place, correct.
Okay.
So I
Yeah,
think
it's-
what's a little confusing is, so all along Swananoa River Road, that retaining wall is about 8 to 10 feet tall, right?
Correct.
Somewhere around there. And then we have the building elevations, but the building elevations don't show the fact that we have, where that wall is in relationship to the building, right? A vertical.
Mm-hmm.
There's some top of wall elevations, Kate, on there.
Right, but just thinking about what your experience is if you're walking along that sidewalk.
Yeah, we don't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you didn't have to provide that. I just wanted to just confirm that
Okay.
that wall is, I think it's at 10 feet at that corner, right, at Truckers, somewhere around 9.5 or 10.
Yeah, it's about 9.8 on the plans.
Okay.
And it's and there's really the only quote unquote buffering of the wall are just trees, right? There's nothing vegetative or.
Well, and I was sorry to break in. By the UDO, there will be screening required. So it either has to, I think you get a choice of either like bushes and trees versus or a green screen, and sometimes natural stone facade is allowed instead of landscaping. And it's a little bit of a complicated chapter of our UDO, but so it would have to be more than these street trees for something would be more than these street trees. Now, if it was all land stone, that might suffice. I need to look at that.
And it looks like the reason you have the smaller ornamental trees there, which feels insufficient for that wall, is because you also have the challenge of an overhead utility through there, right? Isn't there
That's correct. There's an overhead utility, and there's also the 30-foot sanitary sewer easement along the front that we are not allowed to plan in either. So we kind of had to push everything as far back as we could up against the wall. And the small ornamental trees are a direct result of the overhead electric.
One question I had, which, and maybe it's for that 864 number. I don't know who just spoke. But I was wondering, because the first thing I noticed was like, wow, that's a tall wall that's just building up the whole site. And so I wondered, and I was looking at the Aldi, which we reviewed in here, and their approach was, we've got the sidewalk, a little green space, a smaller wall, a little more green space, and then some parking that helps get that grade so that your building is 2 feet above the BFE. Did you guys look at that? And does, programmatically, did you study that at all? Because it's creating a really different experience, right, than the Aldi site, which is next door. Like Google Maps isn't as up to date as what's built now.
Yeah,
exactly.
Retaining wall system.
Yeah, and what's driving that there is, so if you go back to that site plan, you can look at this too, but at the site plan, you can see where the floodway limit line is on the plan. And per code, we're not allowed to put any vertical obstruction in the floodway without doing a flood study for the entire Swananoa River district. And if you look at the way the floodway line is angling, it actually angles off of that Aldi property, and it clips a small portion of the corner. So they have the ability to do what they did, whereas we don't. So that line continues to angle, and their property is only impacted by the floodway on the corner, versus for our site, it's impacting the entire frontage.
Which is this a small dashed line on the tile. I don't think we labeled the floodway line, but it's this dashed line.
Yeah, there's a label on the right-hand side there.
I was wondering if you move the entrance to that corner, I mean, how do you get people in and out? It seems with all these walls right there. I mean, I understand the visibility aspect is preferable, but just
Yeah,
curious.
or if you had rotated your building, so the length was into the site and the parking was behind it or something,
So rotate the building 90, like almost 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the wall. I'm sorry, the long wall just seems like. I mean, you're setting yourself up for vandalism. I'm afraid. I mean, that's. I don't know how many linear feet, but it's a lot of feet of blank beige wall. Maybe.
In the river argument, we call that a canvas. That's a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And I will say that when we talked in the first pre-app, my thought was that we'd want the building up next to the street. And I don't think I really fully realized how high this would be. And so I guess a question for both the design team and for the committee would be, I think Jane's got one idea, turning it. I guess another idea would be, what if the parking in the building flipped? Still maybe changing where the brick is and wrapping. I think that would be good on Swannanoa regardless somehow. But would it be better for it to be more like the Aldi and have the building just pushed back? I mean, this is really, I tend to think in urban terms, but this really isn't going to be, with the environmental conditions here especially, this is not going to be an urban corridor. So just reactions from either anyone, that'd be great.
Yeah, my first reaction was like recognizing the floodplain and what limits, that's limiting, like what's the best approach for the site, and building a 9-foot wall around the whole thing feels like, what are some other solutions, that to still, how can we naturally grade some of it? And people do walk along it, and I appreciate that there's trees, and we've got some other comments on the buildings, but that's my thought. It's like, what's that, if we just start with the approach, and I know you guys have, so it might be good to talk about it.
So, Todd, I'll let you jump in on the grading perspective, but so we did, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, if we do push the building, if we flip everything and push the building to the back of the parcel, I think that does help us quite a bit, right?
Yeah, so Megan and I actually went through, I don't know, 6 or 7 different concepts. I think we put this building on every corner of the property, and that's correct. If we basically mirror the site, put the building at the back, let the parking lot fall towards Swannanoa River Road, that will save some grading. However, due to the fact that what you see out there today already is 8 feet above the roads, and we've got to take it another 4. So we're going to be up 10 to 12 feet above the road no matter what you do per the building code and the flood elevation. And no matter how much we move, you're still going to end up with some retaining wall along the frontage. It might go from a 10-foot wall to a 7-foot wall, or maybe a 6-foot wall. And then the other downside, that what we kind of felt like wasn't the best idea, when we flip that building, we're now putting the business end of Caliber facing the road. So someone driving by is going to see all the cars. Obviously they'll have a screen fence, but you'll have the cars, you'll have the overhead doors. Whereas what we currently are proposing, all you get to see is a building facade, and kind of the business end of Caliber is shielded from view.
Yeah,
that was kind of our logic and thought process.
Yeah, I agree with you, Todd. I mean, I don't think seeing a bunch of dented, beat up cars is attractive. That's why I was thinking if 90 degree, then you could put a wall around the the yard, and it'd be a smaller frontage, and it could be screened. And maybe the building would have some presence to Swannanoa. Right now, you've got basically a blank wall facing Swannanoa River Road, which doesn't relate to the river at all. I mean, that's where the river is going that way, not Truckers Road, Truckers Place, but Swannanoa River Road. And the materials, and I realize you're using very much, I mean, you haven't done anything different. You're just using prototype designs. You haven't changed it for Asheville or for the river. You just basically redo it. But, if we look at something like Aldi's, which, did harken back to at least using brick, which is respective, trying to place some honor, which is to the older buildings along the river, which is something stated in the guidelines, page 11. It seems like something like that would be more appropriate, at least for the public facades. 2 cents.
Okay.
I have a question about the parking, and that's related then to, the orientation of the building on the site. So I'm not familiar with this, this building usage as much. So is there a way that the parking doesn't all have to be in the same spot? So looking at the parking summary, you're providing 75 spaces, and that, could you just, so those 75 spaces, is that number the number it is because you have to provide spaces for cars to sit while they're waiting for someone to come pick them up?
That's correct. Yeah, those are either waiting to be picked up or waiting to be worked on.
Okay. So and then you have your customer parking and you're parking for your employees. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way to break those two types of parking up so then you can reorient your building.
Yeah, we could try to look at that. One thing we're up against that's business driven is any vehicle that Caliber takes possession of to work on while they have it, it has to remain behind a locked gate for insurance reasons. So that kind of presents a little bit of a problem in separating customer parking versus employee versus how you would want to spread them out. So we really have to have it fenced off and really keep it closed in from a security standpoint.
So essentially that rectangle on the northish side, basically we'd be just moving that around that parcel. But everything that's in that rectangle has to all be together.
Yeah, it either has to be together or it has to be secured and fenced off somehow. So you're either going to end up doing multiple satellite fenced locations somehow, and I'm not really sure how that might work.
So I have two related questions. One is regarding the fencing. I don't remember, did we get anything that described or illustrated what the fencing looks like, what it is? And my second question is, there's a whole lot of pavement here, and I'm just curious as to what you're doing related to stormwater management on the site. Obviously, water quality and water, water-related stormwater issues are something that we, as are very concerned about in terms of how it contributes to the river. And I know there are city requirements, but just trying to understand how you're handling it.
So the stormwater will be handled via an underground detention system. We haven't obviously gotten into the design of it yet, but we were anticipating using kind of an open bottom arch pipe that does, infiltration, and it's kind of a detention / water quality setup. So we've done that in the past in the city, and we're well aware we need to meet all of the stormwater ordinances, but haven't gotten too far down design. That's kind of what we had, penciled in for what we would do on this site.
Thank you. I did not, maybe because I'm looking at small drawings on my screen, but I'm sorry, I missed that. I didn't see the underground detention. So thank you. And the fencing?
Oh, the fencing, yeah. Right now, I've just got it labeled as a 6-foot screen fence. As for what material that is, we're open to, I guess, whatever would kind of jive with the rest of the site. Typically, what we would do is either a vinyl fence, like a white vinyl fence, or just a standard wooden screen fence. I have seen some decorative options in the past, but they don't offer much in the way of screening.
So are they solid? I don't necessarily understand. Are they solid? Are they mesh? Are they?
It can be either.
Well,
So
yeah, go ahead, Megan.
yeah, so we use a variety. So like Caliber's usually their first pick would be like a black chain link fence with the slats in it. We can also do a wood privacy fence, white vinyl, which would be, the wood and the white vinyl are both solid. We've also done a decorative metal fence, which would, those are not solid. You can kind of see through it. So it's really, lately we have been doing a lot of white vinyl or wood privacy fence. So they are solid. You cannot see through them.
So if you use the black chain link fence, it's the kind that would have the slats to obstruct the view through it.
Correct.
Okay.
Bring up an example really quick if you would like to see what that would look like. Sorry, just doing similar to this, where it just has, that would be the black with the black chain link with the privacy slats in it.
So I have a couple of questions. And I know you're proposing potentially a change in your elevations, but it seems like there's, besides it being all metal with no openings on Swananoa River Road, there's no landscaping at the level of the building, except for at the back where there's fence. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's per Asheville code. We have technically that's required because it's a vehicle use area. That's why that's shown. This landscape plan was kind of created around the Asheville code.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's nothing, and there's utility. I don't know what it is, gas meters, maybe, I don't know, electric panel meters on the Swananoa Riverside facade, as my understanding. And then there's also, you have some screening of equipment, but you have a bunch of chimneys, it seems like. Is that what those are on top of the building?
The different vent stacks. Yes.
Yeah. Just metal, like just aluminum metal vents. Is that what those are?
Correct.
And going back to your signs,
Mm-hmm.
I know we didn't finish that discussion, but you have both building sign and a monument sign or a freestanding sign. But it's my understanding those are internally lit. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the guidelines discourage that, right?
For the internally lit signs. Okay. What would be the preference?
Not internally lit.
Okay.
Well, it's strongly discouraged. Again, you have to look at the guidelines. I know you have prototypes, but in looking at the guidelines, we look for adaptations of things like prototype proposals. So, what you're looking at ostensibly doesn't meet the spirit of the guideline in terms of the signage, both aesthetically and and in terms of the lighting, particularly. So,
Jean, I'm sorry, this is Sasha. Would an example be a more appropriate example? Be like I don't want to call them gooseneck, but like a light that kind of hangs over the sign.
Oh, it can externally, sure. It can be lit some other way, but not lighted letters and multicolored decorations or whatever.
And is that what Aldi did on theirs also?
I'm sorry.
I know they did on their original Aldi's that was behind it. I don't know about the newest one, but because the original one had the gooseneck.
Yeah, unless it's not lit. I don't see any lights on it, unless they just don't have lit signs, or maybe there's some uplighting in the canopy.
I don't know.
Or maybe, yeah, down lighting. We wouldn't have.
Or downlighting from up in. Okay.
I think just as we're like looking at the building, a couple of things I noticed is just it looks like there's an attempt for some mechanical screening, but then there's like some another chimneys, but like tall exhaust, and I assume they're of that height because that's a code requirement that's needed for your building type. But have you been in other jurisdictions where they've asked you to screen all the mechanical? Because that would be preferable.
Yes, we have had to screen the mechanical in other jurisdictions. It's usually there's either mechanical screening or we end up having to raise the parapet. And Brenda, feel free to jump in if you want to discuss more about.
My clarification would be mechanical versus those paint chimneys, because that's quite high.
I was asking about those. That's okay. So they're paint chimneys. So have you guys? They're high, I guess, because you need to get them a certain number of feet above the building.
Correct. They have to be a certain distance away from any intake.
Mm-hmm.
But they're bare metal aluminum, right?
Okay,
correct.
Well,
Yeah,
I have one of those on my woodworking shop actually as well. They're galvanized metal usually, and right, they've got a thing on the top that opens and closes as the fan is in use. I don't know how the others on the committee feel, but I don't object to them. I feel like it's in the spirit of other things along the river there, that light industrial kind of things, and I don't think just having a facade that went up in the air to hide them would necessarily improve the looks of the building, and certainly in another way it also calls to the purpose of the building, in my view, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that, Joe, and I'm also now realizing we're already going to be like 13 feet below it on the road. So I was just looking at your other, at Megan, at your photos of other projects from like a point of view.
Let's see. Yeah, and so in this particular one, the one that's labeled Fresno, Texas, that, I don't know if you can see it in the back in the distance, but that would be kind of what you're seeing for the stacks. I'd say the elevations probably make it look more prominent than it really is in person.
Yeah, especially if you're coming from a 5'6" average person's view from the roadway.
it's wishful thinking. Some of us are a lot shorter.
I'm in that boat with you.
And also, just to go back, because my phone was muted when we were discussing the elevation materials, and I didn't unmute myself when y'all had already moved on. So I just want to go back to that. It is a prototypical caliber collision, but we decided to move forward with the submittal as is because we thought that some of the components on the elevations that were prototypical did meet the intent of the industrial area, given the fact that we were using stacked stone, EFIS, and then the metal along the sides. And our adjacent buildings also have those characteristics as well. And that was a lot of the intent of that code, was that we kind of mesh with the existing.
Except that there is a design. Some of the buildings, in fact, most of the buildings, except maybe Aldi's, predate the design review committee or the design guidelines. And so the design guidelines are to move design forward. So that's what we need to look at, is how it meets the design guidelines, not necessarily how it jives with something that may have been there for 40 years or 50 years. So I appreciate what you're saying, Brenda, but I just want you to know that that's what we need to look at. So.
Okay. And I do apologize if I missed it, but I was looking, starting on page 9 of the print, where at the end of the numbers is page 9. It's the remainder of the river district, which is where I was told that we needed to concentrate our efforts. And I don't see, just from moving forward, from any revisions that we need to incorporate so that I get it correct,
Sure.
what the actual finishes are that we need to incorporate.
Well, if you look on page 11, and I don't have, I can open the guidelines on my computer, but I wrote it down. It says, where new buildings are built, a distinctive character honoring the older and longer standing architectural traditions of the riverfront is encouraged. For new and existing buildings, reference may be made to the character buildings in attachment B or other historical documents. So I refer you to that page 11, or Sasha's, maybe somebody's bringing it up. Maybe that's Megan bringing it up.
And I guess that's where the confusion is, because I was basing it off of the surrounding buildings, other than the fact that Aldi was brand new. And
Yeah,
they
well,
show brick, they
Aldi's
show cultured stone.
Yeah, Aldi's is new, but it went through the design review process. So it's part of the response to a guideline, I guess is what I'm saying.
And
So
that
you would
was,
prefer to, you would prefer to
Sorry.
see brick versus the cultured stone towers? I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of what it is that you're looking for.
I'm not sure that a metal building on the public facades are what I would think of, but I don't know how other commissioners feel or members feel.
Yeah, I mean, the piece I noticed, I'm going to pull up my elevations. The Truckers Drive elevation, I just looked at the elevations first and I thought, oh, that's going to be on Swananoa River Road because it's got more articulation. It has windows, and I know that's your office side and that the plan cannot work that way. So then when I went and I was studying the site plan and just that it's like a completely solid wall. And I've been reviewing our design guidelines today to figure out, we don't have like quantities of breakdown and proportion. But it's been something, if you look at the original Aldi's and this one, they just tried to break up, just articulate that a little bit. And that's not a requirement. So that's something they've done. But one thing that I think we do encourage is lighting on the Swananoa River side, Swananoa River Road side on the building. But at this point, I'm almost questioning, like, would you want on the wall or on the building? I'm still trying to figure out how it feels like from that sidewalk for a person, but it's just a pretty big blank wall.
Yeah, and related to that, when I was just refreshing my memory with the guidelines, reading about how we have something in there about long runs of fence being broken up by large evergreen trees and shrubs. And because I was trying to figure out how, I'm imagining like dogwoods or redbuds, they are going to look really contrived and silly out there doing nothing to offset the impact of this tall wall, which you've explained why it's there. Thinking about that, and there's really not a lot of information. Maybe you haven't worked it out yet with the plant species, but trying to figure out, it's not a whole lot to respond to. I mean, I see a small ornamental tree, and I'm assuming you guys are gonna, look at the plant list and match the title of the trees with the selections there. But wondering if there's a way to sort of, instead of lining them up all along there like soldiers, maybe like creating more clusters of habitat or a mixture of evergreens and the deciduous in pockets along there. It's a little bit more of a naturalized planting that maybe makes sense down in a river area. But I understand it's an industrial commercial setting, but maybe there's a way to sort of soften it and actually create something a little bit more interesting by, combining more natural landscaping with this more industrial this space, and also help with that screening, because the cost to screen that to the degree that I think we all want to by lining it up is going to be, it'll be expensive.
Let me say just add one thing. I wondered if it would be possible, instead of just having the one, vertical retaining wall, which may need to be there right below the edge of the building, but say step out maybe even 4 or 5 feet towards Swananoa River Road with a lower wall that would break up that vertical distance and allow for some plantings.
Can they do that with the floodway, Joe?
Yeah, Joe, it's in the floodway. I think they explained that they can't do a vertical structure in the floodway.
Oh,
And that's where the difference between them and Aldi's, if the dashed line is the floodway, and it's right at the wall that they built or proposing to build. So
in order to stagger the wall, then they'd have to set the building back further.
You could lose some parking and maybe get enough space.
Okay, well that explains that, but it doesn't solve the the big vertical wall. But anyway, just a thought.
So we did look at an option where the building is rotated 90 so that the office does face Wananoa. So that is kind of the primary thing that you're seeing. Todd, tell me to be quiet if there's other reasons we didn't want to go that route. But I think our thought from some early on discussions was that having the building rotated and pushed up towards the road, as Todd mentioned before, kind of shields the public view from the storage parking. If that is not a major concern, if we rotate the building 90 degrees, I think that might help some of this. And Todd, please interject if I'm misspeaking. But it does.
Yeah, you'll still have a wall. I mean,
right. Yeah, the wall's not
every
going to go
every
away.
option and every option and rotation that we've done, you'll still have some version of a wall.
Yeah, I think we understand that, but gosh, even I'd be in favor of a 6-foot wall over a 10-foot wall. I mean, any bit at this point, I think would really help. And then in terms of screening too, it's a lot easier to screen something, that's 6 feet than 10 with the challenge of the overhead utility.
or even something like a vegetative wall. I mean, some kind of screen on the wall that actually had growies on it, so that it was a vegetative structure itself.
Like a green screen.
Yeah.
What about a mural? Have you ever done murals? And I know it kind of opens up the town I live in, Safety Harbor. It's kind of, we were all about murals, and then we weren't, but it does kind of help break up. But then I know you also kind of open yourselves up to graffiti and vandalism. So it's kind of a catch-22 sometimes. It looks pretty at first and then goes downhill like a month later. But I just want to maybe get your thoughts on that, if that's something that is appealing to the city of Asheville, or.
I will say that for the retaining wall, and I sent a question to one of my reviewing coworkers, a mural doesn't really fit the screening definition.
Okay.
I'm not saying you can't do it, but it wouldn't fulfill that requirement.
I have a question about the guidelines. The river area encompasses a pretty large area. And so you have, the Heartland River Arts District has a certain look and a certain history versus as you spread further out along the river. So I'm just wondering, when we take pieces, if what Jane was referring to in page 11 refers to every section of the river, or are there certain sections that we need to be looking at certain buildings and other sections looking at other buildings because they have different, they feel different, these different areas. And are we trying to, with the guidelines, make them all feel the same? Or, that's sort of the question, Jane.
Well, Jeremy, that the guidelines are not perfect, but that is what it states under the other areas of the riverfront. And there is that section, page 11, that talks about, using using examples from the river for that, in the core area to take it along the riverfront, for new buildings, to pay respect to it. I think that, honoring, they talk about honoring. I don't think they say duplicate, they say honor. And when I hear honor,
the core area, you must take them from the core area and apply them everywhere else?
Well, I'm just reading what it says. It says, where new buildings are built, a distinctive character honoring the older and longer standing architectural traditions of the riverfront areas is encouraged.
But it doesn't say the core area, it just says the riverfront areas. You define the core, I mean, the plan defines the core area.
It does then reference the appendix, the attachment B, which is sort of the core area. So that's why I went to that area. And again, it's in that same paragraph, you know, reference may be made to the character buildings in attachment B or other historical documents. So I'm just reading what we're mandated to, you know.
I don't know. This sounds like you're a textualist, an originalist. I'm sort of joking, but it's sort of I don't view it quite that specifically, because I feel like these different areas have different senses to them.
But again, you know, if we're looking at what is precedent, there is an Aldi's, you know, that two Aldi's now, but you know, Aldi's store, which was under the design guidelines. The other buildings that are surrounding it aren't,
Right.
haven't been. So again, all I can look at now is, you know, someone, you know, who hasn't had any experience with the other buildings, but look at what was done. It sort of meets this kind of criteria. It isn't a literal historic building, but it pays some honor to the character of you know, of something that's there. And then you look across the street and what's been done in the Walmart sites, there's similar things. And those are newer buildings. So, you know, again, you know, we're trying to stay on a precedent if we can, you know, and cite something to help the applicant as well. You know.
Megan, could you go to page 28 of this document?
Yes.
It speaks a little bit, 27 and 28 are about this sub-district.
Okay, because we're in the east, Swananoa River East District, correct?
Correct. You're doing my job for me, so thank you.
Yeah. So this is the beginning of the district. Is this the slide you wanted, or do you want me to move?
Or the next one, too.
This one, okay.
So that, just so you all can see that, and this is.
I like the U-Haul one.
Tell
I'm
them,
gonna say this.
But the U-Haul wasn't done under the guidelines. I
So
mean,
my point is, I just think I learned a new word from when I was on P&Z from Ms. Hudson, simulacra. I think trying to make everything look a certain way and then using that as a precedent to keep it. I like certain buildings look better with metal panels based on what their actual function and use is, and certain buildings look better with, you know, brick and ephes. I think for this use, it just feels more appropriate. You know, that's why I focused on the U-Haul ones, because that feels like a right type of, you know, facade for that use. But that's just me. It's just a personal opinion.
Jeremy?
Well, I kind of agree with Jeremy on this one, that I don't see why everything that's built has to have red brick. It's just a metal. I mean, they may have masonry for the retaining wall, but the rest of it. And were you just talking about the retaining wall now, or?
no.
I went back
I don't see
about the
why
timing.
everything has to be so similar. I mean, it is an industrial building. We don't need to hide the fact that it's an industrial building. I mean, it's fine to incorporate features that, like plantings and so forth, that make it more attractive. But having it pinned into a certain style, just because it's in that area, I think is unnecessary, in my opinion.
Well, and I'm looking at this page right here, and it specifically says images which could provide a visual cue as to thematic designs utilized in future redevelopment of this area. They've got a picture of the U-Haul building as a specific point of reference for future projects. It may have predated this design, but they're using that. That was what the intent was, at least partially, and along with these other images.
okay.
And
Okay. I hear you, Jeremy.
I just wanted to say
Sorry,
from a
Sasha.
staff perspective, sorry, this is Sasha. From a staff perspective, I think metal, personally, I think metal is an appropriate material, but I shared, and I said this at the pre-application meeting, the blank wall expanse, I think, may be the greater concern. And I don't know if you all can speak
I agree.
to, like,
I agree
windows
with that.
in there somewhere, or
Yeah, blank wall and utilities. I mean, that's what we're looking at as we drive by.
Well,
I mean, if we turn the
this is
facade a little bit, you know.
this is Brenda, the architect for Caliber. That was Megan was trying to explain that to try to get more of a frontage on the corner, we were going to flip the office area to where you'd have that tower. So you would have stone and ephes to turn that corner, and then the rest of it would be the metal.
Yeah.
So Brenda, would you be moving all the utilities then?
But yeah, essentially the
Yes.
utilities would go onto the inside of the parcel, then not on the street side.
Yes. So see how this wraps the corner? You would see this now from Swannanoa. So instead of having like this wall would now, this is what the interior wall would look like, and this is more like what the exterior wall would look like. So you'd have this corner feature.
So how long is that building, Megan? On the Swannanoa Riverside?
Oh, I'm gonna have to refer to the site plan.
You're just looking for a building length.
Yeah, you know what the building dimensions are, Todd?
It's roughly 167, 170, something like that.
My computer's frozen. I could tell you. Hold on.
So it's more than 100 feet of metal, even if we say metal is appropriate, metal blank wall. After you turn the corner.
Correct. You're looking at about 140. But you're also, if you're concerned with the pedestrian view, like some of your other members were commenting, it's more about that retaining wall, because that's the 7 feet that they're going to see before they even look up and see the building.
So, right. I will just, this is one of the layouts that Todd had mentioned. We have moved this building around this site. Probably too many times than I'd like to say. Todd probably hates me for it. But this is, I don't know if this would help alleviate some of that concern, because now the front office, so the primary facade is the pretty side of the building. I'm sorry, I don't know a better word to use, but
Just making sure I'm still muted. Sorry.
oh. So I don't, this is a concept that we looked at. I know one concern that I had was that the access is going to be closer to Swannanoa Road, and typically we like to keep it pushed back. But I would like to share this because it does help visually. Visually with what you're going to be seeing from Swannanoa, and it kind of orientates the primary facade. And this is something that we, could proceed with. Todd's going to hate me for switching it up again, but
Megan, with this scheme, how high is that retaining wall? And is it in the same location?
Yeah, so there is retaining wall out here. Todd, it might be a little bit lower because we'll be able to slope a little bit more from the building, but it's still going to be pretty high.
Yeah, so as you come in the entrance drive, if you could kind of just visualize this, because I don't have actual grades on this, but as you come in, that wall would basically be nothing. Mm-hmm. And then as you go up the entrance drive, it's going to go up in elevation and gain height. And by the time you get to where that head-in parking is, that wall is probably going to be 8 to 9 feet. You might save from the other layout, you might save anywhere between 1 foot and 2 feet or something like that. And I'm just kind of spitballing here because I haven't designed it, but
yeah. And is there any space to terrace it then, or is it still? I can't tell. Is that still at that floodway?
Yeah, it's still set right on the flood line.
It looks like
Maybe,
you have some planting area potentially even behind it as well there too. behind
Yeah,
that
you
wall?
could have a small. Yeah, you could have a small enough area to plant some shrubs.
Well, another idea for the retaining wall might be to just have a metal screen or something attached to the retaining wall, so you could grow vines or some kind of greenery up on the wall, so that it wasn't just an expanse of retaining wall. Would be one option.
My feedback on this is like, one, I think all of us on this committee appreciate it because we get our chance to be on the flip side of this table too. So we know that it can be really tough, and really just like the program of your building makes it, it's a challenge because you have so many points of access. So even like ramping and having stairs and ramps to get to that elevation aren't really feasible. I'm kind of appreciating this approach more, and I know it forces like a back to the beginning, but it comes down to the way it was cited with the submission is like we're looking at the back of the building,
Right.
and because the front of the building in this case, I mean the side is sort of the front, but the long part is the back. And Jeremy, I really appreciate all this conversation, and I was sitting there thinking like, I also don't love it when someone just kind of tries to force articulation, but I think part of our charge is thinking about from that pedestrian experience, even the vehicular approach experience, and sort of the longevity. So in a way, the fact that, is it 30 feet back? This wall is like about 30 feet back, or is it farther?
From
No, the wall
Swananoa?
is
From the road.
As far as
Yeah, it'd be 30 plus. Yeah, it's probably 50 some odd feet off the wall,
Right.
off the road.
I would say it's close to 60 feet.
So, and like that's, I guess, helping. I'm kind of like I'm coming to terms. You guys have been looking at it forever. I'm coming to terms with we're gonna have this big wall because it's zoned and allowed, and that's great. And that's a good service that you can provide. So, but I think where I'm heading is like, I think it's kind of about what can help mitigate that wall, and maybe it's a little bit less about like creating the aligned frontages. Trying to think of what, future developments along the street, just trying to kind of preserve a good pedestrian experience, because we don't know how that whole area will continue to develop. And I'll step off. It was just a comment to say I'm liking this approach a little bit more. Thinking of a wall going from nothing up to 9 feet instead of like steady 9 feet.
Are you allowed to plant anything in the MSD easement or not? Nothing.
Based on our experience, we can plant shrubs and small trees. But what I've currently shown on the other layout is completely outside of the MSD easement. So what we could propose would be kind of how I think it was Catherine that brought this up about some clustering and moving some of the shrubs or trees around. We could certainly facilitate that. And I think MSD would be amenable to, if we had a little bit of, shrubbery on the edges of their easement, I think they'd be fine with that. But in our experience, large trees, things like that, it's an absolute no.
Well, I'm not thinking about something to screen this wall, since I'm thinking about the pedestrian experience. And if you've got 60 feet before you hit that wall, you've got a whole heap of space to do. You've got landscape architects.
You can plant a forest.
To do, well, not necessarily to hide, but to make it, beautiful or nice. I don't know, just an opportunity.
I'm going to break in here, and MSD will not let you plant any trees of any kind. So just so you know, because what they're worried about is if their line breaks, they're coming in there and they're tearing everything out. So they're not.
How about shrubs and grasses and nice?
Grasses are fine. I think small shrubs would be fine, but no trees.
Yeah,
Sorry.
in our experiences, if we do even that, it's got to be on the edge of the easement. It can't be kind of all over it. It's got to be off to one side.
Sasha, let me ask you something, if I might. Is not that easement area also potentially the side of the greenway along that way?
That's a great question, and Stephanie is on the meeting, and she may know more about the greenway alignment on Swananoa than I do.
If I remember correctly, it crosses from Walmart. It crosses across that bridge, and then I believe, crosses Swananoa River Road.
You're
And-
correct, Joe. You're correct.
Okay.
Right now, but it is just I'm sorry, it's just a preliminary alignment. But that is the intended path where the sidewalk is.
Mhm.
That's what I thought. So that will dedicate quite a bit of that space at some point if that path goes forward. Just getting the greenway and a bike path or whatever else is going there. But it will have its own plantings too. So anyway, just a thought.
I'm just looking at the time and wondering if the committee has any more questions for the applicant in regards to their submittal.
I don't have any other questions. I welcome this new business and actually live in that neighborhood. So I think it's a good use of that property from my perspective.
I guess I would just listening to comments whether it would be appropriate to ask the applicant, look at the committee, ask the applicant to we put this on hold and that they relook at the orientation, parking, wall, landscaping based on comments on maybe the signage and come back to us, or we take a vote on what was submitted, not what we're looking at now. I mean, not changes. I mean, what was submitted. So it would be my recommendation to the committee to consider maybe asking the applicant to take our comments into consideration, come back next month or however long it takes them with a revised plan based on the comments that we've submitted. And
James, before we ask them to do that, is there a consensus that we prefer the building to be moved, you think? Amongst the community?
I would be in favor of that. It looks like Lindsay would be. I don't know about Joe and Catherine and yourself.
I mean, yeah, I think I kind of like that one a little bit better too, just so you don't have that big long wall of nothingness.
Well, that's three of us.
Yeah, my main concern, I'm not an architect and I can respond to, the elevations and things, but the wall was really a major concern for me.
And I want to, I think asking them to go back would also be to think about how that wall is treated, landscaped, shield, screened somehow, something that would be more appropriate to the street.
I think that would be my. I would like that if they did come back after considering things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the building oriented the way. Personally, I'm okay with it oriented the way they have it on their site plan. If they could buffer that wall somehow with plantings or something like that, a planted screen or climbing screen or something that that would make it less of just a imposing.
Well, they've got trees in front of it.
Well, I know there are trees.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just running through my shorthand check because I know I said I liked it rotated, but I'm also not the one that has to go back and do that work. So I recognize that. When I look at our check, like a unofficial checklist, we should have a checklist. Buffer, check. Parking is buffered in this layout, check. The distinctive character, I wrote, not fully, kind of recognizing its prototype. I don't know that it fully engaged the distinctive character of our buildings. Trees to visually break up a long expanse. That's what you did. I mean, that's what we list on page 10 on this wall. So it's in compliance. I think we're just struggling with the wall. The one you answered my question on mechanical. I feel convinced of the paint chimneys. Muted colors, yes. So really, the one thing I'm just kind of it's the wall, but I don't know that we have a guideline that says it other than if they break it up. And the only other thing I can think to consider would be we encourage a lit building facade facing Swananoa. And that's where all these had done some gooseneck sconces. But depending on the orientation that you end up with, I wonder if it should be the wall and not the building. I don't know what makes sense. But I'm just trying to, Jane, having been with you on it a little bit, it's like I'm trying to stick to our guidelines of what we have, even though we know they're not right. But to me, I guess I would love to understand the wall better, and that's where I'm not fully ready personally to vote. I'd be remiss at voting how it's been submitted, but I'd like to understand, like, from Swananoa River Road, what does that wall and building feel like and look like?
Okay.
Would it be beneficial if we possibly submitted like and I apologize, Megan, without talking to you first on this one, but maybe like a 3D rendering from the pedestrian point of view so you could see how they interact visually?
I think
Sure, that would
would
be fun.
That'd be great.
Or
Go
a
ahead.
section, a simple section even.
But if you're proposing changing your orientation or changing your elevations or, reorienting the entry, I'd say, it'd be good to have a full pack, get this full submittal again. And my committee are looking at you all. You're in agreement with doing that or recommending that, or would you like to vote?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lindsay, you just did a terrific explanation. I mean, my question was more based on, I didn't want to know if there was a consensus on a preference one way or another. And then also, I'd like to hear from the applicant. The applicant looks for our use. This configuration works best. So then maybe, let's see if they can address, like you said, a 3D, or how do we treat this wall, this blank space, either lit up or something,
What I had one other thought about the screen, the fencing with the screen. Just if you might consider something besides just the black chain link fence with the slats, maybe even just another color that was, went more with the building and the greenway theme. So instead of black on black, I don't know. That's just another thought on my part.
Yeah, I don't know if we have the guidelines to request that, but
Yeah. So Megan, Brenda, I don't know how you feel about going back and coming to us again with a revised scheme, or if you feel like you want us to move forward with what you originally submitted.
Been sitting here thinking about that because there's benefits to rotating it. Honestly, I think part of what led us towards this layout was some of the upfront conversations and thinking that this would be more in line with what you were looking for. But if you are okay with the building being rotated 90, there are some benefits, I think, to us of having that orientation. It's certainly better for customer parking and visibility for Caliber. I would, with the retaining, it's kind of a balance for this. I'm going to be honest, this site is a stretch to begin with, because of the elevation challenges, and we are in a floodway or a flood zone. There's some options for reducing the site. We have to flood proof, but that poses lots of other issues and concerns. So we were trying to stay away from that. But if it's a toss up between rotating the building and kind of going back to the drawing board and maybe coming up with something that's better for all of us, I would probably prefer to do that than try and, dress up the facade and try and dress up a retaining wall. I just don't know how that's gonna, I don't know if there's a good way to do that, honestly. I do like the green screen idea. I know Starbucks does that a lot, and I think it looks nice, especially when the plants get really mature.
It's not just the wall, though. You're dealing with this 10-foot
Yeah.
wide wall, 150 feet or whatever many feet, and then you've got the building wall. So you've got these two blank
Right.
walls sitting up on top of each other to address. My
Right.
only final comment would be careful what we wish for. On one hand, this achieves hiding the use, all the cars and the storage of the cars. If they come back and do the work and flip it and we satisfy one area, we've now just created, just be happy with that solution. It's not going to be shielding the cars the same way.
Yeah. But,
Yes.
but Megan, what you showed though had that parking, that storage lot still sort of to the back part of behind. Yeah. So, it's still back and it still has a wall around it, right? Or a fence around it with screen.
Right. So the fence and I don't know if we provided an example that has like the white vinyl or shows. So when we do the privacy fence, which it would extend, so I can draw on here if that would help. The privacy fence, Jeremy, I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be my next question is like, if we switch it, I kind of want to flush out maybe some of the other concerns that could pop up. So that red line that I just drew is approximately what would be the privacy fence. When we do, whether it's the chain link black with slats, that would probably be the least, it's not as opaque. When we do the white vinyl privacy fence, you can't see anything behind it. Unless you're like climbing up over the fence or flying over, you're not going to see what's behind it. And then, especially it being set back this far off of the primary road, you wouldn't really see anything behind it. But it does now, from a paper standpoint, it is more visible, even though. So I did want to, Jeremy, I'm glad you brought that up because I did, I do want to get your thoughts on that.
So Megan, it looks like you could landscape in front of, at least on the driveway coming up, there's a large U shape or oval shape. You could landscape that. You could also, instead of running the fence in a linear along Trucker's Place, you could in a sense, step it and have areas of planting, which are now on the inside, that there's some landscape area on the inside of the parking area, but you could put it on the outside and use that to screen it with some vegetative materials as well. Instead of having a long linear fence, have it step.
Kind of,
yeah, a
little bit more like this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be literally like that, but something to get those, capture those landscape areas if you can, and use that to buffer somewhat. Use it to plant, or as Kate was mentioning, do some kind of a little cluster of planting that was vegetative. So again, it gives you more opportunity to buffer in a way.
So now the longer facade is now going to be facing the east. So, are there going to be concerns about traffic coming? I don't want to create problems for myself, but I sit on the planning and zoning board in my city. So I know like these are all, eventually we're going to get there. So I might as well just ask it. But, are you going to be concerned about the view coming, heading westbound on Swannanoa? With considering the floodway, I think considering the floodway, it does extend down. It looks like the same distance off Swannanoa to the east. Considering that any future building on this site, if it ever redeveloped, would be pushed back. So I think it would block it. I know the existing building is set farther back, so I think it's going to block it anyways. I just want to ask because.
Well, your first, the option that you presented had less room for any sort of plantings on that side. This actually provides more. So I think you have even more flexibility on that side than you did in this scheme.
Right.
Megan, this is Sasha. So I would just say, my only warning would be to check with transportation about that distance from Swannanoa. Like
access point.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it would be fine.
Correct. Yeah.
So Megan, it sounds like maybe you could look at this, that there are some opportunities, some positives, both for you as a client and for us as a committee in terms of maybe tweaking this somewhat and coming back at a later meeting to show us, and working with staff in between on that if you have questions.
Okay. And I guess as we work through this, is there an opportunity to get prelim feedback from the committee so that we're heading in, so that we're sure that we're heading in the right direction? Or I don't know how the process is set up, if this is a public forum and we have to do it under this, or if you're allowed to comment.
I'll let Sasha answer that one.
Yeah, and we did this a little bit before. I can send out anything you want, and members can respond individually to me, and I'll send it on to you or however. But we can't have group emails where so no decisions can be made by email. I do think that it's helpful that we've had this meeting so people are more familiar and they might be able to give feedback pretty quickly. I think before all these folks are really busy folks, and so they had a hard time finding time to look at your drawings and understand them. But now that we've had this longer meeting, I think folks really understand it at a good level.
Okay.
It's more about their time than anything else.
And if we're rotating the buildings, that is the direction that we are going to go. Does that mean you're going to be more inclined to accept the metal panel facades on the sides?
I would say from my perspective, and I'll just speak for myself, I think the fact that there's glazing and windows and some masonry of some sort facing the public view meets better the guidelines, and the metal behind is it's almost irrelevant. It's part of the building behind. I mean, I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but Lindsay, I don't know how you feel.
Generally agree.
Yeah.
I generally agree too, but I think your number one call should be the transportation and make sure you can access this site.
Right.
Because you're willing to look at it, but if you guys have a lot of constraints on this site, done the best you can do to make it work. So first, make sure that works. I'm not opposed to your first plan. It's just this one would be preferable if it works for you.
Okay. Todd, I don't want to put you on the spot, but have you had any discussions about that, or with transportation at all? Not yet.
No, but when I drew that up, you and I were going back and forth on so many different concepts. I did check the code, and based on what I found, based off of the use of Trucker's Place and the classification of Swannanoa, I feel fairly confident that it meets the spacing, but sometimes the code and how it's interpreted can be different. So I'll definitely reach out to him and confirm. But as of right now, that's drawn per the manual.
Okay, and this is a state road, so that it will be NCDOT. May have some rules that city and DOT sometimes have,
conflicting.
Yeah, they get precedence.
I guess, Todd, are there any other specific things that we need to bring up that may change with this layout I'm not thinking of, or we haven't talked about, that we might want to get staff or the committee's feedback on while we have them?
I don't really think so. I mean, to me, there's an elephant in the room, but I don't know that it's related to this committee. That's pedestrian access. It's virtually impossible on any of these layouts.
But given the use of this building, if you're coming to this building, you're not coming by your,
No.
you're coming by your car,
And you,
by a cab.
not as much pedestrian. I guess if you leave your car there and you had nobody.
Well, there is also there is a button in front of all these. So that would be a possibility. People could walk from there, but it wouldn't be that hard.
But you're showing a sidewalk currently, is that correct? Coming out of Trucker's Place?
Yeah, I'm more talking about ADA access to go from up 12 feet from the road to this site. There's virtually no way to construct that.
Well, we live in the mountains. I think we'd be hard pressed to have an ADA path to every building, much less every street in Asheville.
Hi, this is Dave Hazard with the city. They do allow for areas of safe dispersal when you can't get to a public right of way. I don't know what those standards exactly are, but from an ADA perspective, you would have to have an ADA route to an area of safe dispersal, and they do allow them on site if you can't get to a public right of way through an ADA route. So, but we do have out, ways. As Jane said, we are in the mountains. It's challenging to say the least at times. So there are ways to accommodate that ADA requirement without getting to the public right of way.
It's true. You may be able to use like a grass area or maybe the parking. Maybe they'll let you use a parking area.
So it sounded like we were headed towards another meeting on this and not a vote today. We probably wrap this up.
Megan, do you have any other questions? If we're glad to entertain those.
So I guess just some specific directive that we're going to head in. We're going to go. So if we decide that we're not going to do a vote, or y'all decide you're not going to do a vote, then we would go back to the drawing board with the rotated layout that we have shown. We're going to confirm this. I think the first, I guess, what happens if first step is going to be confirming this access spacing. If we find out for some reason that we can't do this and we do not have another good alternative to move it up farther away from Swannanoa, what does that mean? If we're stuck to, if we're kind of forced into a direction where we have to stick with the current plan, do we have to come back to a meeting, or I guess kind of what does that look like?
Well, Sasha maybe can direct it, but I would say we've had our discussion. We have to have a public meeting, but I think we've been through it. If nothing has changed or nothing is proposed to be changed, we have the information. I would assume we could vote on it based on that, unless there's new information or new comment, right, Sasha?
Right now, sure. Oh, you mean at another meeting? Is that what you mean? Or?
Yeah, if it's continued, but it doesn't change, and they have to, based on what they find out, they have to just, I'm sorry, but our original plan is this, and then we can vote on it. I mean, we have mentioned a couple of things, and you have mentioned a couple of things. Specifically, I would say the lighting, lighting of your signage. You talked about maybe rotating your entrance. I mean, if you had to come back, if you were going to do those kinds of things, it would be good to submit them. But, I would think it would be a much shorter meeting and it could be handled, relatively fast.
Exactly. I think the committee's given enough input on enough issues that even if you couldn't change the layout, that there may be a benefit to just having a review with additional information, and you would get a more positive vote than if you voted today. Let's put it that way.
I have a process question.
Yes.
We can have a vote as the subcommittee, but isn't the statute the vote by the larger commission still, or has that changed?
No.
Yeah, the formal design review vote is at the commission level. I mean,
Right. So just from a timing standpoint for the applicant, if they can't change it and they send us information about this is how we're addressing some of the areas of concern that you had mentioned, do we have to have another design review do we have to vote as a subcommittee for the Greater Commission, or can we do that at a regular meeting? Do we have to have a separate meeting for that? Just process-wise, I'm not sure how that works.
I think it's a public vote. It has to be at a meeting, I would assume, Sasha, right?
Well, I think what Jeremy is asking is, does the UDO require this committee to take a vote? And I think, strictly speaking, the answer is probably no. And Stephanie, I think, is still in the meeting. She may be able to speak to that more. I think when it goes to the full commission, it's a much stronger application when there's been a vote at this committee and it's been fully vetted, I guess I would say. I think if the applicant said, we just don't have time, we can't come back, that's one thing. You know, I think the committee's asking you if you're willing to come back, if you flip it or not, either way. And I think the question is really to you all, can you come back for additional consideration? And Stephanie, I don't know if you have something to add to that.
I just wanted to confirm that in the ordinance, you are not required to vote on anything before it goes to the full commission.
So it goes without a recommendation.
That's correct. It also doesn't say that you have to, your job is to actually provide advice or comments to review and comment on. So you don't necessarily need, you can just provide comment and you do not have to provide a recommendation on whether or not it aligns specifically. Yes, Jane.
That clarifies things. I wanted to suggest one thing that would be helpful to me. Even if you leave the building oriented the way it is on your drawings, if you would give us an updated elevation that actually showed the retaining wall and the trees from the Swananoa River Road, and any ideas you have about buffering that wall with plantings, it might give a more realistic look the way the building would look to a person on the sidewalk, say.
Right, and I'm not trying to put the team on the spot here, but I think it's really, you all have a decision to make, and I think we could arrange a meeting next month if that's what works best, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I would look to the applicant, to guide that. I don't want to push them if they can't do it. So, I mean, we meet monthly, Megan. If you can meet, if you can get the information in a timely manner to Sasha, so that we have time to review prior to a meeting, provide any comment back, to Sasha. We'll do that. Usually, at least, good to have at least 10 days before our meeting. Sasha can give you those dates. But if not, we meet every month, so we can meet again. And this meeting got delayed because of weather, so we're meeting a little late. We'll be meeting maybe quicker next time. I don't know. Sasha can give you the dates.
Yeah, we can, and we're kind of off sync of what our normal meeting date is in general because of COVID. But it really depends on committee members' availability and your timeline.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess when is the next commission date and deadline to be on that agenda?
Well, the next commission meeting is actually in 2 weeks from today, and so I don't think you would be ready really to come regardless. Steph, I mean, even if you weren't changing the orientation, I'm not sure that we'd be able to process it that fast. But Stephanie, we could have I don't know.
So what I would say is, the next commission meeting is scheduled for the 28th, but that was based on the full commission seeing the business of these design review items. So if this committee is not ready to move it forward, there is always the option of asking the full commission to move it back to the regular meeting date, which I believe is the second Thursday in February.
Second Thursday in February.
Well, the grants center could possibly be a voted item in 2 weeks. Right?
Can I just recommend that staff get with the applicant on these dates, because it's confusing to us because there's the commission and there's the committee, and whether the committee is meeting prior to the commission. It sounds like you're just going right to the commission. So maybe lay out the scenario and copy the committee on that and the applicant.
Yeah, I just want to be cognizant of, whatever decision we make of either going back to the drawing board or requesting a vote on what we've submitted to date, kind of what it does to us timing wise. Just, we are under contract. I want to make sure we're not putting ourselves in a bad situation, with our contract timing and other things.
And we appreciate that, Megan. And, that's why I say, work with staff and, they'll direct you as to the dates that are potential for what, there are different scenarios. So that they're presenting. So I think they need to work with you on that. So if that's the direction, I thank you, Megan, Todd, Brenda, everybody that from your team for your presentation, your time and patience, and providing us with information and discussing alternatives. So staff, I'm looking at the time, it is 5:41. Your thoughts and committee into doing any more business. I know you had talked about potentially talking about the grant center, but at this late date, I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
Well, I guess what I would, we don't have to keep going. And Megan and your team, you're free to exit out if you like. And I guess the question for the committee is, I sent you materials on the grant center. They provided additional materials based on the list of questions that you all raised at your last meeting, things like handrails, what does the bridge look like, seat walls, screening material, screening of mechanicals, is the shade staying over the basketball court, all those things. So they've provided all that information. Now the big change, obviously, if you've looked at the plans, is there's a swimming pool. And so that's a big change. And I did not ask the project managers, I was talking to them today, I did not ask them if they were under a tight timeline. Right now it's scheduled to come to the full commission in 2 weeks. And they're prepared to present. So you did take a vote on the project, which was a positive vote. It did have this major change. And what do you all think about that? I mean, I guess you could all send me individual comments between now and the next week, let's say. I have a staff report started and 80% done. Do you have thoughts, or Stephanie, you may have thoughts?
I guess another question to put out was that knowing that there's this major change, did anyone take a look and have objections to that major change or design that would cause this committee to want to have a larger discussion?
I had some concerns about stormwater, significant concerns about stormwater management on the site. There was, and I have to be careful because I was involved with the first design, so I don't want it to seem like I'm sour graping, or complaining. But I am concerned about how that water gets back to the river. And I don't see, I see where the new building is being, transferred water into various stormwater management systems, but I see them getting rid of the stormwater management for the first phase of the project, which was significant. And I've asked staff about the LEED certification because I'm wondering, does the city lose its LEED certification if it does some of these things, which were part of the approval for the first phase, and which won awards from the state ASLA. So, I'm wondering where all that water goes. That first building is being literally cut off. The drainage swale is gone. And so I do not know how that is being handled. So I'm very concerned about that. That's just one aspect. I'm concerned about, the screening of the pool and how that pool is. I don't have any objection to a pool, but just, again, here we are talking about fences and screening, and there's, landscape requirements. Just wondering about that. I don't see that on the plans.
Hey, Jane, I have a question. Having just being in the middle of a new construction project with the river with the stormwater requirements, isn't that going to be required that they manage that and deal with it? Even it's particularly
but it's the problem of how they're dealing with
the
it.
first phase, because
It may be, but I'm just, there was a bioretention system. It was designed as something more than just putting it underground. I mean, it was part of a whole bioswale system that went into two separate ponds. Cost us as taxpayers, a substantial amount of money to build, and purify the water that eventually gets into Nasty Branch. And again, I know they're trying to do some of that with the new design. So I'm not questioning. I'm just trying to understand it, because it disappeared, and now we have more parking. So I'm just trying to figure out, okay, where did that go?
So I wasn't at that meeting, and I'm sorry I missed the meeting back in August. And I have some comments just for plant species. I can just type those up and share those instead of going through that. And they're all pretty. There's a lot of little things, but again, nothing that would hold up like a positive vote. But the stormwater, echoing Jane's, I see these, bioretentions in the front of the building, which are a design amenity, which I think are great. I love that it's like a feature of the site. It's unclear though from the drawings what stormwater that's actually handling, because the rest of the site is all, at least from my interpretation of the drawings, is all basically just going into typical gray infrastructure, which is disappointing because this started out as a real hallmark project for how to incorporate green infrastructure into our city landscapes. And it seems like a big step back. And I feel like, and I wonder if it has to do with cost or what, but it seems like a lot of the landscape architecture is really nice, and I'm sure that's not, I just don't want us to give up on really meaningful things like green infrastructure for colorful pavement and like something that's really like exciting to look at, because that was an important step, and this feels like a step backwards. The bioswale through the parking lot is gone now. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it carried all the water from the main roof of the first phase. So I don't know where, it has a. I'm pointing at my
so
screen.
all the parking lot now is basically going in one catchment basement and then basin into detention. There's a large underground SCM on the rear of the building. I don't know, is that handling all the building stormwater? I'm not sure. And then those bioretention swales, I'm not sure what those. Anyways, I wasn't at the first meeting, so I don't feel like I can say a whole lot, but I would support that.
This is a change there. That's the parking. I mean, some of the things are different. That whole parking is different. So, in the first phase, right?
It is. I think there is some additional parking due to the swimming pool. I will say that I did talk to them, the city staff today, and they are taking into account I was messing with the wording. We said, all impacts to the, the lead components of how it is are being mitigated on the site. So they are looking very carefully at that, and there's a lead AP working on, the architect's the lead, professional, and is looking at all those things. And there are definitely cost concerns on this project. So
but it'd be good to have that information. I don't see it on the drawings. So.
The gym apparently, that gym is, in terms of costs, that gym is as small as it can get in terms of having a standard basketball court. But they have, really trimmed it back as far as they can. So, yeah, and I don't, yeah. I'll just.
So it sounds like we can send an email to this group that provides answers to some of the questions you have. Is that correct, Sasha?
Sure. Yeah, and I guess the question for Stephanie, I don't know. I mean, I know we're in the river area, but how much does stormwater kind of come into design review?
When it's part of the design, it does. So it's a little. This is a little iffy. So it's like you all are asking the right questions. It's not the purview of this committee to figure out how they should manage it, but when there's a significant change in the visual character of the area. So, for instance, the removal of a bioswale, which is part of the visual character of the parking lot, I think that's a valid question because you're altering the design of the area.
I would
So
also say, Stephanie, that it's, under our priorities for last year, we had advocate for the improvements to the management of stormwater, including attention to water quality and flood impacts. That's one of our goals.
that's the commission, yeah, and that's the commission's goals, but it is not part of this committee's purview.
I'm a commissioner. I'm a commissioner.
absolutely
Jeremy's
you are.
commissioner. I mean, we're commissioners
But
on
that's
this
not what
committee.
you're voting on design review for. Just remember that.
I'm sorry, but I disagree, Stephanie. I think that that's a guiding principle. That should be a guiding principle for the Riverfront. I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate
It
that.
is.
I think it should be too, but y'all have been saying this whole time that you want to follow your guidelines only. So whereas before we had been having a conversation, do we follow the guidelines only, or do we follow the principles that we know are what we're trying to reach for in the Riverfront? So so this is an ongoing conversation. This is a great example of how maybe we can use this as a case study for amending our guidelines and just adding in stormwater management, if that's what you guys want to do.
So based on the guidelines, I just have a couple of comments about the vegetation, and I can put that in an email and send that to.
That would be
Do I
great.
send it to you, Sasha?
Yes.
Do I copy people, or is it just supposed to go to you?
Just me is fine. And you
Okay.
could copy Steph if you want.
Can I ask a broad question? Because obviously I'm going to always defer to Jane when it comes to architecture and design, because that's her profession. But
Well, Lindsay's on this call too.
it's, and I picked up, on one hand, I'm thinking this is stormwater, but it does, as it was or is part of the design. So, but is this possibly an either or situation in order to keep some of the stormwater designs? We're choosing programmatically. Well, if we do that, you can't build this, which will provide X to the community and it requires X number of parking spaces, or can we do everything? Or is it just simply budget where they can't do everything for budget and you have to pick and choose? So, that's sort of, I'm asking that question.
Well, there's no right answer. I mean, there's always a lot of different design options that one looks at. I'm sure they picked what they thought was, and I'm not second guessing them. They picked something they thought was probably the best for them. But whether it solves all the problems or not, I don't know. Or creates more problems, I don't know. It's a large site. There's lots of opportunities for different things. There was a master plan done years ago for this site. This is different than the master plan. So things keep changing. I mean, it's like whack-a-mole, with the city.
So it sounds like that the committee, I mean, if this came to the commission in 2 weeks and had additional information and answered some of these questions, that would be okay? Is that what I'm reading?
I think yes for some of us and no for others.
Lindsay, were you talking?
No, I'm just making eyes. No, I'm just trying to, I'm always trying to what's the hat to wear in this? So I did not have the stormwater questions, but I appreciate Jane and Kate, your eye towards that. And obviously that site really, really well. And that stuck out to you. I had I was thinking about the fence, but on the last project, I think it's okay. I think I wouldn't want to not let the community have a pool because we want a more expensive fence. And as long as it fits in our guidelines, right? The only thing that kept sticking in my mind, which was Joe's comment last time, was should they put something up in front of the basketball court so they don't run into the parking lot? And maybe it will slow down at the bioswale. But that's a really programmatic little thing. But I think we talked about it, and then maybe Dorothea was maybe I'll think about it. But I don't know that that's even in our realm. So I didn't. And I think they added the screening right on the roof, and they didn't have that the first time. Yes. So that
yes, and
that's
or at least it's detailed out anyway. And the fence around the pool, similar. It says in there it'll be similar to other pools, and I live near Malvern Hills Pool, and it's basically a black fence, and it's pretty high, but it's very transparent, and you can see right through it.
Yeah. So the stormwater might be the bigger topic for the commission then. But in terms of what they presented this time versus last time, those are my only comments. And I can type them if you need them. Me too.
There were some questions I had about potential sidewalks that aren't shown on the plan that just was curious. I mean, exits that don't go anywhere, whether they had to go to a public right of way from the building, particularly on the southeast west side. I thought I saw something on one plan, then it didn't show up on others, and that was like, I wasn't sure. So it just, and they're exits, but they just kind of empty, and I wasn't sure if they needed to go to a public right of way as an egress. So
okay, I'll take. There's a sidewalk on most of the backside, but not. I mean, there is a sidewalk on the backside of the building.
And maybe I'm missing it. So.
But the basketball court.
Yeah,
no, the other side, towards the pool. There's an exit.
Oh.
I'm sorry,
Lindsay. The architectural plan looks like it's still showing a building on the around the basketball court, but we knew it wasn't. So I mean, they're still showing like walls, but I think
a wall. Yeah, that's the other thing.
That's what you were thinking, but I mean, I can understand it, and I don't know that.
Okay, well, I can add that to it. We can make sure we get that information.
Yeah, there did look like a masonry wall around the basketball court, and that's not called out. But
well, I think it's just all the way gone. I just think it's not up to date.
Yeah, there's on page AE 101. There's exits out the west side of the building. I guess it is.
Would you like me to share my screen real quick? Or
just typically, if they're exits, they typically need to go to a public right of way. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
I just think that's not the building anymore. It's just outside basketball court.
So this is the site plan.
It's E101 is what I was looking at. AE 101.
Do you know what page that is? Let's see.
6 maybe 6 or 7. I don't know, it was crazy. Yeah, that one.
AE 101.
Yep, that's it. So the let's see, I'm drawing on my screen, but on the left bottom of the pool, sort of on
the pool side.
I'm pointing to my screen. It's not going to help it. There are exits from the building, and there are exits from the pool, and there's a concrete pad, and there's another door just below the concrete pad coming out of the building. Yeah, where your cursor here.
Oh, okay. Out towards the front of the building? Of the existing building?
Are you talking about the concrete pad that's just in the corner in between the swimming pool and the existing building?
And then it looks like there's a door that comes out of the building, and I don't know if that's an exit.
Move your cursor left.
Yeah, it's just literally a square, Sasha, that's kind of in the negative space between the pool and
right below that is a door.
Yep.
I would just check and make sure that they're not needing sidewalks. I just ask them. I mean, just ask if they need sidewalks, and just, I was curious.
That took me. Got it.
I'm sorry, guys. I have to run. I hate to do that.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I have a time thing. Thank you. If this goes on and we need to join again, I will prioritize and so happy New Year.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Okay. So.
Did we lose Jeremy?
So it sounds like we're all just send you things. Is that it? And I'll I can clarify things like that. Last thing.
Okay.
Is it okay if I send it on Monday?
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you, Kate.
All right. Thanks.
All right. I guess I will adjourn the meeting unless there are any objections. There's so few of us left.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kate.
Okay, bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Deb.
everyone. Bye.
Sorry it went so long, but thank you.